Hey BookTube, Chelsea the Reading Outlaw here to do kind of an interesting video. As you guys probably all know, I work in a library, which means I get quite a few things coming across my desk in and out of my life, and we're allowed up to 50 checkouts on our card at any given time, which I usually have pretty maxed out. Except for I don't really like to have a whole lot of rollover going into the next year because I use my card so much and because I usually have it all maxed out. I like to have at least one time in the year when things can kind of settle down a little bit, not be quite so crazy. And so I tend to kind of only cherry pick kind of the 5 or 10 things that I really most am looking forward to reading out of what I still have checked out once December rolls around, and those are the only ones I carry over to January of the following year. So I have picked them out. I have 10 selections for you guys. They're all sitting right over here. These are the 10 books of everything that I have checked out that I'm going to kind of roll over into January to keep with me. Some of them you've seen before, some of them you haven't, but I'm just going to kind of show each one briefly and maybe say a couple things about it. So on the top of the list is a book that just came in, and I'm probably not going to have time to read it in December, so obviously it's getting rolled over because it is Troublemaker, Surviving Hollywood and Scientology by Leah Remini. If I have never talked to you before about my fascinating love for Scientology, then let's just have a chat. I am obsessed with any religion that is even vaguely cult-like, and I am doubly so with Scientology because it started by a guy who made his money writing science fiction and fantasy until he wanted to invent a religion that's also a tax shelter. Sorry if anybody out there is a Scientologist, let me know in the comments and we can discuss. But this, Leah Remini, for those of you who don't know, was kind of the poster female child for Scientology, whereas Tom Cruise and John Travolta have kind of been the male counterparts to that. Leah Remini's been one of the more outspoken females involved in Scientology until recently, and now she's out of that crazy place, and she wrote a book all about it. Tom Cruise is supposedly pissed. The church is supposedly pissed. You know that means it's going to be some good dish in here, so I am very, very excited to read Troublemaker by Leah Remini. Up next is Citizen, an American Lyric by Claudia Rankine, and this is a book that is a collection of pictures, like thoughts, quotes, poems, just tiny paragraphs, basically all about social identity, racism, being an American, what it means. Yeah. Confession. The reason I am reading this book is because of the story that came out, and I don't know how many of you heard about it, about the woman at the Donald Trump rally who, she's an African-American woman, she's sitting at the rally, some, a white guy leans over to her and kind of, pokes her on the shoulder and clearly, admonishes her for not paying attention, and she gives him the biggest look of, bye Felicia, whatever, just, frozen, shut down, and then she goes back to reading her book, and the book she's reading is Citizen. So, I mean, I had to pick it up. I had to. So it's small, it's paperback. It's supposed to be very, very heavy hitting despite its size. So I am excited to kind of digging my teeth into some really kind of juicy nonfiction in 2015. Next up is a book you have already seen, and that's Dumplin by Julie Murphy, excuse me. This is a young adult book all about Dumplin, who is a big girl who's proud of it but doesn't quite know how to handle herself when the popular guy in school who essentially all of, what she knows about high school has taught her should be out of her league. All of a sudden he might be interested. He might be more in her league than she thought. That kind of trips her out, sends her on a little bit of a head spin. And yeah, it's supposed to be very funny and very full of body positivity. I mean, look at that. Look at that little cutout on the back of her in her little 50s swimsuit. I love it. Very excited. We'll also go along with some YA-based reading plans I have for 2016, but we will get into that in another video. Up next is Radiance by Catherine M. Valente. If you have not already heard or seen my review of the third Fairyland book, it went up sometime last week before. I will link to it down below. See if I can get the little box thing to show up here. But I love Catherine M. Valente. Her middle grade YA series, Fairyland, is some of the best stuff that I've read for that age group in a very, very long time. And this book is described as a deco-punk pulp science fiction alternate history space opera mystery set in a Hollywood and solar system very different than our own. So, I mean, I can't not read that. Next up we have one that you have not seen yet, and this is The Man Who Spoke Snaketongue by Andris Kivarak? I don't know. It's definitely not an English surname. It's translated from Estonian, so there you go. I'm just going to read the in-flight flap for this one to you guys, too. Set in a fantastical version of medieval Europe, the man who smokes snakish follows a young boy, Lamit, who lives with his hunter-gatherer family in the forest and is the last speaker of the ancient tongue of Snakish, a language that allows its speakers to command all animals. Parcel tongue, anyone? But the forest is gradually emptying as more and more people leave to settle in villages where they break their backs, tilling the land to grow wheat for bread, and where they pray to a god very different from the spirits worshipped in the forest's sacred grove. So it is essentially a story set in a non-European Renaissance, I'm assuming. I'm assuming it's not. It says a fantastical version of medieval Europe, but I'm guessing that since it's from Estonia and he is Estonian, it probably will be more Eastern Europe than Western Europe. I'm also just looking, and most of the names seem to be pretty Eastern European, but we shall see. It is fantasy. It is a novel about gentrification and urbanization, religion, identity, community, and what happens when all these things start to change. Plus, that cover is awesome. I heard about this from Liberty Hardy over at Book Riot, and she, so far, has not steered me wrong on her recommendation. So I am very excited to pick up The Man Who Spoke Snakish, although that title is going to be a bitch to review. Next up is something you have seen on my channel, but not for a very long time. I have been squirreling it away, and it is The Oregon Trail, A New American Journey by Ranker Buck. This is about a man and his, I believe, brother-in-law? Maybe just brother? Oh yeah, his brother Nick. And they set out in an actual legit covered wagon with actual legit mules, and they set off across America on the Oregon Trail. The actual established Oregon Trail that people used to take to Oregon, and that if you are an American school child who was born like 1986 or later, you have played the game Oregon Trail on your computer. And this is that story. He wants to see what it, as close as possible, what it would have been like to take those roads, to live that lifestyle out on kind of the open prairie. I'm really interested to see how this reconciles the past and the present, and what it would be like to live like this, even though you know that you're in denial of all the modern conveniences. So it's a little chunky. It may take me a while, but I'm very excited to pick that up. And then we have The Girl Who Slept with God by Val Berlinski. This is another Book Riot pick, this time from Rebecca Shinsky. This is about a young girl who lives in this town who is a virgin. Arco, Idaho in 1970 tells the story of the three Quanbeck sisters, Frances, gregarious and strong-willed Jory, and fervently devout Gracie. Their Orrin is a respected member of the community's evangelical church, until Grace returns from a missionary trip to Mexico and discovers she's pregnant with, she believes, the child of God. So you can only imagine how that goes down from there. I've been weirdly into stories this year about people who have maybe had interactions with deities, whether it's they've possibly been impregnated by God, or they're hanging out with somebody who is a god and isn't telling them. There's been a lot of that going on. Rebecca Shinsky will not stop talking about this book. It's supposed to be amazing, so I am really, really looking forward to getting into, I'm hoping it's some magical realism-y type stuff, whatever the explanation is as to why she's pregnant. But as soon as I read it, I will let you know, and then we can find out together. If you already know, don't tell me. Here's another one you've seen. It's so big, you guys, but it just sounds so adorable. The 13 and a Half Lives of Captain Blue Bear, a novel by Walter Mowers. I read from the inside flap this time, so I'm not going to, but this literally just sounds like Captain Blue Bear. In this world, bears get 14 lives, and he's on 13 and a half of them, and it's just stories about his, like, crazy adventures. Like I said the last time, it is definitely published a little differently. It's got these, like, side mark note annotations that I haven't seen since I was reading, like, classic American literature. There are illustrations involved. That's hopefully going to make it a little bit easier to get through this huge chunker of a book. But I am very, very excited, and I hope it's just kind of something really light and fluffy and delightful. And then I have, these last two are both nonfiction. They deal with kind of a similar subject matter that should come as no surprise to you if you've been watching my channel for any length of time. The first one is Becoming Nicole, The Transformation of an American Family by Amy Ellis Nutt. And this is the story about a transgender girl and her identical brother and what happens when our transgendered girl decides that she wants to transition. And this is really interesting because it looks at the whole issue of or not the issue of, but it looks at transgender issues from the perspective of both somebody who is transgender and then somebody who also is dealing with that in kind of an interesting way, being that they are identical twins. Her brother now has to kind of reconcile some things through his own mind because it's even tougher. As tough as it may be to have a member of your family who is transgender, I imagine it would be even tougher if that person is also identical to you in every physical way. But yes, I don't know anything else about it other than that, but I am really, really excited to read it. Alongside Then Comes Marriage, the United States v. Windsor, and the Defeat of Doma by Roberta Kaplan. This is the lawyer who actually took on the specific case who brought down Doma. It was not Obergefell, although she did file the people's brief in the case of Obergefell versus Hodges. Excuse me. This is actually a case that came slightly before Obergefell versus Hodges in Mississippi, dealing with kind of a similar issue, but the two court cases together are what brought down Doma. This one specifically is about the United States versus Windsor, which is the one that took place in Mississippi. I am very, very excited, especially after having finished the Sisters-in-Law about Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Sandra Day O'Connor. I have been like weirdly into senatorial politics and the Supreme Court, and I am definitely down with no more Doma. Love wins, guys. Love wins. And I'm excited to read the actual story behind how that all came about. So there you have it. There is just about 11 minutes on the 10 books I am planning on carrying over from 2015 into 2016 in terms of my library list of checkouts. As always, if you've read any of these, let me know down below. If you have any ideas on where I should start once 2016 rolls around, also let me know. You can always like, always subscribe, always comment, and of course, always catch me somewhere else on the internet. Bye, guys.